And good evening. Will the masks stay off? Tonight, the Department of Justice saying it will challenge a ruling on a federal mask mandate if, and an important if here, the CDC says masks are still necessary on planes, trains, and other forms of transportation. Flights erupting into cheers as nearly all major U.S. airlines made masks optional on board. The TSA also not enforcing mask rules, but airports can implement their own policies. Amtrak also leaving the decision up to passengers, reversing an original statement saying masks would be required on board. However, several cities keeping their mask policies in place on public transit, including in New York City, home to the nation's largest transit system. President Biden telling reporters today the choice to wear a mask is up to Americans. But as the BA2 variant fuels a rise in cases, the CDC is strongly encouraging them. The DOJ is not seeking an emergency stay to the ruling. So for now, maskless travel is still taking off. Let's get right to NBC News aviation correspondent Tom Costello.
On Delta Flight 528 this morning.
You are no longer required on Delta Airlines to wear the mask, so feel free to exercise your freedom this morning.
And flights across the country. Celebration mixed with concern. 2 years after airlines began requiring masks and 14 months after the White House required them, the mask mandate is now out, struck down by a Trump-appointed federal judge who ruled the CDC had exceeded its authority in requiring masks on public transportation. In train stations, on planes, and in airports, travelers today seemed evenly split on whether they would keep masking up.
I think it's too soon to drop it, personally.
I, on the other hand, am super glad that the mask mandate is dropped.
I think that you're in a confined space, and it's still, the variant is still really strong, and I don't want to get sick, so I'm going to be wearing a mask.
The ruling comes just days after the CDC and TSA had extended the mask rule until May 3rd, concerned about a fast-spreading COVID variant. For now, President Biden says masking is an individual choice.
People continue to wear masks on planes.
That's up to them.
Tonight, the CDC still recommends people wear masks while traveling. Former acting director Dr. Richard Besser.
There are people who have disabilities, who have medical conditions that put them at greater risk, who are in situations where they are shoulder to shoulder with fellow passengers.
Importantly, Amtrak has also dropped the mask mandate, so have Uber and Lyft. But bus and subway systems vary from city to city. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Seattle have dropped the mask orders, while New York City is keeping its orders for now.
We are going to continue to encourage New Yorkers to wear masks on the subway, and we believe that we have the authorization to do so.
But with air traveler numbers approaching pre-pandemic levels, the airlines have been calling for an end to mask regulations. Flight attendant Jared Fielding was on board Alaska Airlines 2126 when he got the news.
Oh man, it was like Christmas. Just huge relief.
For more than a year, flight attendants have been on the receiving end of disruptive, even abusive behavior, with the mask mandate getting much of the blame.
It's been a really hard 2 years and 3 months, and everyone is at stress level 10. And so we got to give each other a break.
Tom, late word that the Department of Justice says it may appeal this Florida judge's decision if the CDC decides the mask mandate is still important. The Justice Department is concerned that this judge may set precedent prohibiting the CDC from enacting public health orders in the event of another health emergency. Tom?
All right, Tom Costello with that late-breaking news tonight. We thank Tom for that. For more on this, because we know you have a lot of questions, I want to bring in Dr. John Torres. He's live on set for us. Dr. John, thanks for joining Top Story here. So I got to ask you, I'm sure Americans are very confused because the CDC just last week extended that mask mandate for travelers. The president today, when asked, said it's up to Americans. It's unclear if they're going to challenge this ruling. So should people be wearing masks?
Yeah, and here's the thing. So the CDC's job is to look at public health and to look at it from a science perspective and say, where are we right now? We're still in a pandemic. Can somebody catch it on an airplane? Definitely. Are we worried about immunocompromised? Those children under the age of 5, they can't get vaccinated? Definitely. And so we should still keep it in place. But then when this happens, the president has to look at it from a broader perspective and saying, is it worth the fight at this point to try and keep it going? Or do we need to bring that fight back another day, which is what Tom Costello is talking about the Justice Department saying, let's go go ahead and appeal this, but in the meanwhile, we're going to let it run the way it's running right now. And I think that's where we are, Tom.
So I know you're a doctor, but what was your take when people were celebrating on airplanes? We saw Tom's report there's some passengers stripping the mask off right away.
You know, and I've said this for 2 years. I don't know how masks became politicized like this. It's just a mask. It's a public health measure. And when I tell people all the time, sure, if I'm wearing a mask, that's going to give me some protection. If you and I are wearing masks, we both get that much more protection. And so, you know, a person in themselves, and a lot of people will say, well, if you're worried, you wear a mask. Well, that doesn't give you that 100% protection. The vaccine doesn't, nothing does. And so, you know, we're in this together. We need to stay in this together. And I can understand why people don't want to wear masks. I've been wearing them for 2 years too. I'm tired of them, but I tell you, I'm going to be one of the last people to take my mask off.
No, I hear you. Did you think the mask mandates were going to ever sort of expire? Or do you think that it was going to always be up to the courts to sort of put an end to it? I just asked that because it seems like COVID is going to be with us for a long time.
It's a great question. I think they were going to expire. And my guess is when they got to May 3rd, which is they were thinking of extending it to May 3rd, that at that point, if COVID cases had started to come down, which right now they're starting to go up, if they started to come down, they could say, okay, we're in a lull. Let's go ahead and let them relax for a little bit. And we might need to put them back on. And I've been telling people left and right, you need to keep your mask handy because you might need to put it back on at some point. So be ready for that. But now that it's gotten to this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know if anybody knows.
Do you see a situation, because as you mentioned, the BA2 variant cases are rising here. People are obviously not going to be wearing masks in planes. Do you see a situation where this new variant could spread to the point where it paralyzes the system once again, or are we beyond that point?
Yeah, I think we're beyond that point. I don't think we're going to get back to those 800,000 cases we saw with the original Omicron because people are vaccinated. People have that natural immunity from getting infected. But there are those vulnerable ones, the ones that can't get vaccinated, the ones that are immunocompromised that we still need to protect. And, you know, protecting, what does that mean at this point? Well, until the pandemic's over, it means watching out for each other. Once it's over, then we can get back to that stage where we were before, and hopefully other people can be protected even during that.
As cases have sort of come down, hospitalizations have come down, and again, I know BA2 variant cases are up. What's your take on the second booster, the additional booster? Are you still encouraging that?
So the second booster, for people who are immunocompromised or 65 and above, definitely should get that second booster. For those in that 50 to 65 age group, that's one of those, talk to your doctor about your own situation. Look what's happening in your community. Are cases rising? Do you need it at that point? But for those younger than that, you could probably wait a little bit, especially if you've had Omicron over the last couple of months, and just go ahead and see what happens with cases here. My guess is cases will start coming down. And remember, in the fall, they're probably going to pick back up. We might need a booster at that point, too. So that complicates the picture as well.
All right, Dr. John first. Dr. John, thanks for always explaining everything in a perfect manner. We appreciate it. New details tonight, though, we are covering on that grisly murder out of New York City. A mother, her body found inside of a duffel bag on the side of the road with more than 50 stab wounds. Police now saying they have identified a person of interest and that the victim likely knew her attacker. Zincle Esamoah has more.
Tonight, the hunt for the killer in a Queens, New York murder continues. Now, law enforcement offering an up to $3,500 reward for information on the case. Surveillance video shows a shadowy figure rolling a duffel bag in darkness. Police say inside that bag, the remains of 51-year-old Orshaya Gall.
What were your immediate feelings when you heard what happened, especially given how brutal it was?
It's a shame.
Yeah.
So sad.
And it's a beautiful neighborhood, but this is like very shocking that happening here.
Now, multiple law enforcement sources say they've identified yet to be named persons of interest in her brutal homicide who likely had access to the house, and they're looking into several potential suspects. Detectives interviewing those who knew Gall and investigating forensic evidence, including a trail of blood. Police say the crime started here at the Juno Street house of Gall, a mother of two. Her husband, Howard Klein, and eldest son were away Friday for a college visit, according to police. Her husband posting in a now deleted tweet that the pair were traveling. Law enforcement then say Gall was stabbed at least 58 times, with additional injuries likely from self-defense. The suspect then put Gall's remains in a duffel bag and allegedly rolled it half a mile away from her home to this area where her remains were found. Police sources telling NBC New York the killer then sent Gall's husband a threatening text from her phone around 5 a.m. on Saturday. WPIX reporting that text saying, quote, "Your whole family is next." Hours later, police say somebody found the duffel bag and called 911.
Sure, duffel bag.
Authorities following the trail of blood to Gall's home, where they say they made an emergency entry, found blood, and her 13-year-old son on the top floor.
It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
Gall, often pictured with her dog, now remembered by her neighbors like Mike Baker. He says he'd see her out with her dog regularly.
Closer to home is the part that is really shocking. I mean, we're about 200 feet away. And to know that that kind of thing happened.
That shock rippling online as friends remember her, one saying, "We were just on the phone together just days ago speaking about colleges. My heart is broken." As her community attempts to piece a sense of safety back together.
Do you feel safe here?
It's just different.
Yeah, we don't know
different
what
kind of
happened
safe.
yet,
We don't know
you
what
know.
happened.
All right, Zinclay joins us now live from Forest Hill, Queens. So, Zinclay, there's now a reward out for information about the homicide. And do we know anything more about this potential killer?
Yeah, Tom. So what we know is police say that they do believe this was not a random attack, so there is no immediate threat to the public. That say, days later, they still have not publicly released the names of any persons of interest. I've spent the day walking around the neighborhood again, talking to community members. Many of them say this is an affluent neighborhood where crimes do not happen, and they're confident that this was an isolated incident. That said, anytime anything like this happens, it's traumatic. You have law enforcement everywhere. You have media swarming. And I actually spoke to the neighbor of the Gall family, and she declined to speak on camera, but she said this is incredibly traumatic, and she wants people to know that Gall was a mother who loved her two children very much. Tom?
Zinclay Esenwal live for us again from the scene of that brutal crime. Zinclay, thank you for that. For more on this case, we're joined in studio by former NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining Top Story again. I have to ask you, there's a person of interest in this case, and I know it's much different from the case we had last week with the subway shooter, but there's a reason probably why they're not releasing this person's name or image, correct?
That's right. It's very early in the investigation, but that's promising news. I think it'll put the whole neighborhood of Queens at ease, but there's probably quite a bit of work to do to tighten up the case. So they don't want to get ahead of themselves.
Does this tell you, though, that they think they know exactly who they're looking for? It
appears to be that way, and I would expect news to be coming out, in the next day or two, but we'll have to wait and see. Certainly a brutal attack, and an attack like that, when you talk about the number of times stabbed, it's going to be very hard to cover up evidence. So that'll be on the side of the investigators on this.
One of the most grisly pieces of evidence that came out in this was that Nest camera, that sort of doorbell camera that captured the alleged suspect with the duffel bag dragging the body. Do you think from that video, from looking at that video, someone would be able to identify the killer, or is it simply just too dark?
The video that I saw was certainly a bit away, but that's one piece of a puzzle. So they will add to that other video cameras. They may have other still shots. They will recreate this crime scene from beforehand. And it will be, in my opinion, very difficult to erase electronic records. So you start talking about emails, you start talking about phone calls, searches on your computer that may have been happening for days or weeks or months. And as investigators really pull that together, again, when you look at the brutal nature of this crime and trying to get rid of the body so quickly afterwards, I would expect a lot of forensic evidence. I would expect a lot of evidence to come in from electronics, and I would expect an arrest.
The body was dragged and then sort of dumped on the side of the road. What does that tell you about the person who did this?
It's hard to put yourself into those shoes, certainly. You think of the panic. You want to go into any scene and you want to read the evidence. So you don't want to make any predispositions about what might have happened here. So go where the evidence follows you. But certainly from the outside now looking at this, with the number of stab wounds, when you hear stories about somebody else in the house, that individual must have been in quite a hurry to get out of there. Again, that will be on the side of the investigators as they build this strong case, and certainly to not be found with that suitcase. So getting it out of the house, getting out of there as quickly as possible, and then getting distance between yourself and that suitcase probably is what is in the perpetrator's mind.
If they know who did this, what's happening right now? Do you think are they quietly closing in, or do you think they've possibly made contact with this person so this person turns himself in?
Well, I think, you go where the evidence leads, and you start with theories, and then you build those theories. But any theory has to be supported. And they never want to get to an arrest. They want to get to a conviction. So they're working with the prosecutor on every single homicide case from the minute it happens. A a homicide ADA responds to the scene just as homicide detectives respond to the scene. And they're reviewing and building that case from day one, because the last thing you want to do is have a situation where you're trying to get closure for a family that has been clearly traumatized and then not get the perpetrator the justice.
Before you were commissioner, you were obviously on the street for several years. What were the main sort of pieces of evidence that you think the NYPD could have came out and said, basically, listen, we don't think this person's a danger to the community right now. We think this was an isolated case. What do you think they saw that they knew that for sure?
I think you got to look at the totality of what they know. There are things in every investigation, unfortunately, that are held back, and they're held back for a variety of reasons, too. So sometimes it's a balancing act between how much do you put out, how much do you potentially scare a perpetrator away as they're trying to build a strong prosecutable case. And all of that is weighed at very high levels in investigations such as this.
Do you think we will have a person under arrest soon?
I certainly hope so. And I think, again, when you look at the nature of this crime, it would be hard to not have a strong prosecutable case. But that doesn't mean you have to go and rush either. You have to do it the right way. So identifying a person of interest, building the prosecutable case, then there's the apprehending him, and no two cases are the same. So I anticipate all of that with Queens detectives. They do, very strong work. All of that is going on right now behind the scenes.
Former NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea. Commissioner, thank you for that. We want to move overseas now to the war in Ukraine, now entering a dangerous new phase. Tonight, Russia says it has launched its long-anticipated new offensive in the east. Thousands of Russian troops sent into the region as Ukrainian soldiers desperately try to hold on to the key port city of Mariupol. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin is on the ground tonight in Ukraine and reports from Kyiv.
Tonight, in what's left of the battered port city of Mariupol, fear that at any hour, this strategic city could finally fall completely under Russian control. We are scared of the unknown, this woman says. This is what scares us the most. Cut off by Russian forces for weeks, people here say they lack the basics to survive. How can we live without water, she says. It's horrible. The stunning devastation, a potentially ominous sign of what's to come.
Another stage of this operation is beginning.
Today, the Russian foreign minister announced the beginning of Russia's long-anticipated new offensive in the eastern region called Donbass, Ukraine's industrial heartland, with Russia seizing the city of Crimea and intensifying their assault on the major eastern city of Kharkiv, plus multiple smaller attacks, what the Pentagon calls shaping operations, saying Russia has sent in thousands more troops. Still, Ukrainian officials insist they'll win, alleging Russian forces are too disparate and weakened to be effective. But tonight in Mariupol, Ukrainian soldiers' last stronghold appears to be this steel plant. Late Tuesday, Russian state media claimed 120 civilians sheltering inside the plant came out to the Russian military, despite fears that the safe passage promised by the Russians is a trap. Even the city's children are wary of false Russian promises. The day after Makar's 7th birthday, he insisted his family visit their bombed-out Mariupol home for his annual birthday portrait. This is my house. Thanks to the saviors in Russia for doing this, he says. Faced with unimaginable tragedy, a 7-year-old is now well-versed in Ukrainian sarcasm. I told him, don't worry, we will have a house better than this one, his mom says. For many Ukrainians, the dream of victory and a brighter future is the only way to get through this living nightmare. The Pentagon is saying that those Ukrainian forces inside of Mariupol are still successfully holding out, which is drawing critical Russian resources away from this battle in Donbass, a battle which the Russians claim started today. Tom?
Aaron McLaughlin for us tonight. Aaron, we thank you for that. Back here at home into the White House now. President Biden hitting the road to promote his infrastructure law. Democrats looking for him to ease concerns over inflation and high gas prices ahead of the midterms. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has more.
President Biden on the move, a sales trip to New Hampshire to flag his infrastructure agenda with 6 months until the midterms.
This port is open for business and will be for a long time.
But economic headwinds like 40-year high inflation and ongoing supply chain delays turn up the political pressure. Today, Mr. Biden argued his actions to increase oil supply are beginning to bring down gas prices.
Americans should already be seeing the savings. Although it's only gone down about 18 cents, the savings are starting.
Though gas prices are still up 48% over a year ago.
It takes a lot of me trying to figure out, how I'm going to pay for gas today.
A different stress point for this 7-year-old small business, Superfit Hero, activewear for plus-size women. Chronic shipment delays of fabric from Asia are costing sales. 50% of small businesses now report they are significantly impacted by supply chain disruptions.
For us, the top issue has definitely been supply chain. We just literally aren't able to keep our most popular items in stock, which means we can't serve our customers the way we'd like to.
All right, Kelly O joins us now from the White House. Kelly, we just heard it there in your story. These small businesses still dealing with these supply chain issues, and we know the midterms are approaching. You were just telling me the president now has a series of trips planned to get his economic message out there.
We're going to see the president on the trail more. And this week, that includes Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. He'll be talking about infrastructure. He'll be talking about energy and ways that he thinks his administration can try to bring down costs for American families and businesses. They know that inflation, that supply chain, that things that affect people's pocketbooks and therefore small business pocketbooks are really a problem for everyday life and for this political season. So 6 months until the midterms, that's not a lot of time, especially when you see the political headwinds the president has in polling, in the kind of atmosphere that is happening around the president. People know what is going on when they go to buy their groceries or, in the case of small businesses, to buy their supplies, their inventory. It really affects them, and it is hard for them to break out of that until those supply chains start moving. And the administration says they've made some progress. Ports are working a little better. Trucking is moving better. But these are complicated issues, and it'll take some time. Tom?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell for us from the White House. Kelly, thank you for that. From Pennsylvania Avenue to Wall Street now in the Netflix nosedive today. The company's stock plunging about 25% after the streaming giant reported a loss in subscribers for the first time in 10 years. With more on the streamer's sinking numbers, we're joined now by CNBC's Alex Sherman for more on this. He reports on media and tech for us. So Netflix reported a loss of 200,000 subscribers since the start of this year. Alex, is this sort of, I don't know, are people hyperventilating over this? They gained so many subscribers during the pandemic. There was no way they were going to maintain that momentum.
Look, I think it depends on whether you are a short-term investor or a long-term investor. Netflix reporting a customer loss for the first time in more than 10 years is legitimately a big deal. I think it speaks to saturation, particularly in the U.S. and Canada. It speaks to a weaker content slate. In part, some of that has to do with pandemic shutdowns and delays. It also speaks to potentially, and this is the big elephant in the room, the total addressable market for overall streaming subscribers. Now, Netflix claims that is an unchanged number, and many analysts assume that that number is still hundreds of millions of more subscribers than Netflix has today. They have about 222 million subscribers. So if you take the long-term point of view, yeah, this is a lot of kind of hyperventilation and bloviation. But if you're a short-term investor, it's a real thing, and that's why Netflix shares tumbled more than 20% after hours.
Yeah, you can't deny that the stock went down. It's sort of strange, right, Alex? Because if I would have asked you 6 months ago, what is the most powerful name in Hollywood? You'd either say Netflix or Disney, I would think, right? As far as studios are concerned, they were winning awards. They seem to have endless budgets. And now we're having this conversation about them losing subscribers. And it could be an additional 2 million subscribers, right, by next quarter. So I'm sort of wondering, is there a streaming bubble right now?
Well, there's no question that many more people picked up streaming during the pandemic than a lot of these companies expected. Netflix may be at the forefront of that. So is that a bubble? It's certainly an unexpected surge that Netflix calls this a pull forward, where basically Netflix got more people that subscribed than they had initially planned in the last 18 months. And now what they're seeing, both last quarter and this quarter, is a slowdown because so many people signed up initially when, they were stuck at home or couldn't go to work or had other things that they couldn't do from an entertainment standpoint. So instead they decided to pick up Netflix. So yeah, I would say that's a mini bubble. But again, long term, Netflix feels like the amount of people that are paying for traditional cable pay TV, that number is only going to decline as the years go by in this country and in others. And eventually, all of these people will just be getting their main form of entertainment from streaming, so they feel like they have this long runway, and in fact, we are not in a bubble.
Yeah, and they were the first to the party. That always helps. So Netflix says that they're going to sort of crack down on password sharing. Do we have any idea how they're going to do this? Because we know we all have friends, family members who share passwords. How do they plan on doing this?
So Netflix has launched a test. This was announced earlier this year in 3 small countries, fairly small, Latin America and South America, where they have toyed with this idea of charging the account that's actually doing the password sharing more money. So if you extrapolate that into this country, let's say you are letting your sister use your password, then you as the account holder will have to pay more money for the right to share that password. So some people will be in for maybe a surprise if they don't realize that their password is actually being used because it's, you know, their ex-boyfriend's cousin using their password or whatever. That's, I think, how Netflix is going to address this. They will alert all of the accounts, hey, by the way, someone's using your password, and oh, by the way, you're going to have to pay for it now. So some of those accounts will become incremental revenue. Netflix put out a whopping number. 100 million households, Netflix said, around the world are using shared passwords. 30 million of those in the United States and Canada. So that's a lot of revenue that Netflix is not collecting today. That was fine when Netflix was saying every quarter, 5 million, 10 million new subscribers. But now that Netflix is saying the subscriber number is actually going backward, the bill is due. And so Netflix is saying in the next year, they will implement this plan where you'll have to pay in order to share passwords with other people.
Yeah, in the good old days, you couldn't really share your cable cord around to multiple households in various states. Alex, right. I do want to ask you as we wrap up here, because we only have a few more minutes, what is your view of streaming? I mean, and I asked you that as we come on, we're on NBC News now, a streaming news network, but there are a lot of people trying to get into the streaming game right now, and already we've seen people who haven't been as successful as they hoped. What do you think happens in the next year?
The fact of the matter, and my opinion has not changed on this, it's been my opinion for years, streaming is a harder business than pay TV. The pay TV model was great for one main reason. It didn't matter if someone was watching you or not, they were paying for you. So if you never watch sports but you subscribe to cable, you were paying Disney's ESPN $9 or $10 a month every single month for all the years that you own cable. In the streaming world, you're pretty much only paying for stuff that you watch. I mean, maybe you're shelling $6 a month out for some streaming service that you never turn on, but it's super easy to cancel that streaming service, and so there's really no reason to pay for it. So the content needs to be better across the board. That is a harder business. So only the best are going to survive. There's about, 7 or so major streaming players today. It would not surprise me at all if 2 years from now, there were only 5. So only the best are going to survive. Some of these companies are going to have to partner with each other or potentially have to get acquired by the bigger players.
Alex Sherman for us tonight. Alex, we thank you for your time and your analysis as always. Now to a look at an exclusive interview with Prince Harry. Today's show anchor Hoda Kotb sitting down with the Duke of Sussex to discuss his recent visit with his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and his life in the U.S.
How did it feel being back? Being with her?
Being with her, it was great. It was just so nice to see her. She's on great form. She's always got a great sense of humour with me, and I'm just making sure that she's, protected and got the right people around.
Well, you make her laugh. That's what she always says. Did you do it again?
Yes, yeah, I did. Both Meghan and I had tea with her, so it was really nice to catch up with her. And home for me now is for the time being, it's in the States. And it feels that way as well.
Does it?
Yeah. We've been welcomed with open arms. And it's got such a great community up in Santa Barbara. So
you feel like that's home more for you?
Yeah.
All right, Prince Harry with our Hoda Kotb there. You can watch much more of Hoda's interview on the Today Show tomorrow morning. All right, still ahead tonight, the amusement park death. New details emerging after a 14-year-old fell to his death from a ride. What investigators think happened and who might be responsible. Plus, the hostage standoff, an employee held inside a pizza place for more than 8 hours. How the tense situation finally came to an end. And a home burglary caught on camera in Hollywood Hills. The homeowner watching it all happen while hiding in a bathroom. Is it part of an alarming trend plaguing the LA area? We'll tell you. Stay with us. Back now with some chilling video from a home burglary in the Hollywood Hills. Thieves breaking in while the homeowner was inside, and he watched the whole thing unfold over his home security system. The incident part of a new type of crime wave in Southern California. NBC's Isa Gutierrez has the story.
Imagine watching a burglary in your home while you're hiding in the other room. It's what a Los Angeles man says happened to him Sunday night. Home security cameras catching the moment a group of masked men break into his house.
I heard some thumping and stuff going on, and I thought maybe a raccoon or something was in my house. So I checked the security cameras, and my dogs were barking, and I was watching TV. It was very evident that someone was home. And I looked on the security camera, and there happened to be one guy with a mask on sticking his head in my door and putting carpet in the door to keep it open.
The Hollywood Hills homeowner, who asked to keep his name and address private for safety reasons, telling NBC LA he was in the bathroom watching the whole thing play out. He called 911.
They stayed with me on the phone, and they sent a bunch of police, but these guys were in my house for 7 to 10 minutes. They completely ripped that part of the house apart, as well as what's in the garage. They ripped the laundry room apart.
At one point, he says the burglars were just on the other side of the wall from him as he tried to stay quiet until help arrived.
I stuck my head out of the bathroom through my living room. They saw me, and they came flying out the door.
The Los Angeles Police Department telling NBC News the video helped them identify 2 of the 4 suspects. The other 2 are still at large. It's all part of a wave of brazen crimes in the area caught on camera. Police recently investigating videos of follow home robberies in the city. Incidents where thieves target, follow, assault, and steal from victims, often coming home from high-end shopping districts.
They tried to rob me and my child in the alley.
According to an LAPD spokesperson, robberies in Los Angeles this year are up 17.5% from the same time last year. A 2021 LAPD crime report showing that violent crime is also on the rise, up almost 4% from 2020 to 2021, although it's still much lower than a few decades ago.
Home video, even cameras, that kind of a thing certainly have helped law enforcement be able to identify people.
How common is it for a homeowner or for a person to actually be home when something like this happens?
Yeah, it's a very low percentage. When it's occupied, it's so much more dangerous for the person in the residence.
I always thought that my life was going to be peaceful for the rest of my life up here. Last night I thought maybe it's time for me to leave Los Angeles.
All right, Isa joins us now from here in 30 Rock. Isa, I know you have some new reporting tonight about the crime trends happening in Los Angeles and what detectives are noticing there and what's changed over the last year.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. So the LAPD spokesperson who I talked to said that they've actually seen a shift this year. So over the last couple of years, they were seeing a lot of commercial burglaries. You remember those smash and grab videos that we saw circulating online coming out of LA. But they said that what they're seeing now, particularly in this North Hollywood area where this particular incident happened, are home burglaries. I also want to mention, Tom, they talked to me a little bit more about how they used this security footage to identify 2 of the suspects. They said that they actually ran one of their faces through facial recognition. That's how they identified him. And then the second one was actually through what they were wearing. So extremely helpful evidence in these particular investigations.
All right, Isa Gutierrez for us tonight. Isa, thank you for that. When we come back, the autopsy report. An independent autopsy finding Patrick Lyoya died instantly after a Michigan police officer shot him in the back of the head, with the families demanding tonight. And the terrifying moments, a woman faints, then falls into a moving train. How rescuers got her out from underneath it all alive. We'll be right back. All right, time now for Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the dramatic end to a hostage situation in Florida. SWAT officers deploying smoke grenades into a pizza place outside of Orlando, ending an 8-hour standoff. Police say the 49-year-old man took an employee hostage around 5 p.m. yesterday. The man appeared to have a gun, but authorities say it was actually a toy. No word on a motive yet. The employee was not injured. An update tonight on an unarmed black man killed by a police officer during a traffic stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A private autopsy commissioned by the family of Patrick Lyoya found he died from a single gunshot wound to the back of his head. Video shows an officer shooting the 26-year-old while he was face down on the ground while resisting arrest. The officer saying in a cell phone video that captured the incident, Lyoya was trying to grab his taser as they were struggling. Lyoya's family now calling for that officer to be identified, fired, and prosecuted. An official autopsy report has not been released. And actor Johnny Depp taking the stand for the first time today in his legal battle against ex-wife Amber Heard. The actor saying her domestic abuse allegations against him were, quote, not based in any species of truth. Depp is suing Heard for $50 million over an op-ed she wrote in the Washington Post where she said she was a domestic abuse survivor. Heard didn't mention Depp by name, but his attorneys say what she wrote ruined his reputation. All right, now to the investigation into the tragic death of a 14-year-old at an amusement park in Orlando. Officials now revealing key details on how this could have happened and who might have been responsible. Here's NBC's Kerry Sanders.
A makeshift memorial outside a thrill ride in Orlando, honoring 14-year-old Tyree Sampson, who plunged to his death here almost a month ago.
That's just so sad that happened to him.
A preliminary investigation now shows Sampson's seat was not secure, saying 27 of the ride's 30 seats had harnesses that closed down over the shoulders to a rider's waist, leaving a 3.33-inch space. But the adjusted seat where Tyree Sampson was directed had a gap more than twice that, 7.19 inches. A bystander recorded Sampson slipping under the restraint as the 430-foot free fall abruptly stopped from 75 miles per hour to 0. Only 14 years old, Sampson was big, 6'2", 383 pounds. State officials say the ride is designed for passengers only up to 250 pounds.
They directed him to the heavier seat so that they could have all comers. And sometimes, unfortunately, people put profits over safety.
And you think that's what happened here?
I don't think there's doubt about it.
A family attorney shared this photo with NBC News showing height requirements, but no weight restrictions.
He was a very good, charismatic young man.
Tyree Sampson's father has only spoken publicly once about his son's death.
I want to know what happened to my son.
Any parent would want answers in this tragic situation. Kerry Sanders joins us now from Fort Lauderdale. Kerry, it seems like there's two issues at play here, right? One, something was not right with the seat. It was not adjusted properly. And then was Tyree Sampson just too big for this ride? Are they both connected?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I mean, the report makes it very clear that the seat should not have been adjusted like this, that was done outside of any sort of recognition by inspectors. And the ride is limited to people 250 pounds and under. He weighed 383 pounds. You know, the family attorney says that they went and inspected the area and they noticed that there was a metal detector there so that somebody wouldn't go on and try to take some keys or, more importantly, a cell phone that then could fly off. But what they did not see there was a scale to check weight. They definitely believe that not only this could have been prevented, but if Tyree Sampson had never been allowed on that ride, that this wouldn't have happened, at least to him. It's that adjustment to the seat that set it all in motion. Tom?
Kerry Sanders with that new reporting tonight. Kerry, thank you for that. Time now for Top Stories Global Watch and the suicide bombings targeting schools in Afghanistan. Explosions taking place inside a school and near an education center just a few miles apart from each other in Kabul. At least 6 people killed and several others injured. So far, no one has claimed responsibility. And security cam video out of Argentina showing the heart-stopping moments a woman faints and falls into a moving train. Before you watch this, just know that she is okay. You can see her stumble here before losing her balance, collapsing, and then falling between the train car and the platform. Miraculously, though, people there pulled her up. She is alive. She was taken to the hospital and did not suffer any serious injuries, which is truly incredible. All right, coming up, crypto crime crackdown. The Secret Service now investigating cryptocurrency fraud, how investigators can identify these multi-million-dollar schemes. Next. Now to a CNBC exclusive, an inside look at the federal agency cracking down on crypto fraud. The Secret Service, known for protecting the president, now fighting to protect everyday Americans from crime rings buying and selling millions of dollars in illegal digital assets. CNBC's Eamon Javers spoke to the agency's top official on this case to find out just how these criminals are moving the money.
We're inside a rarely seen secure room in Washington. What is this facility we're standing in?
Right now, we're standing at U.S. Secret Service headquarters within the GIOC, which is the Global Investigative Operations Center, which is our hub for our most complex and impactful international cases.
No longer just capturing counterfeit money rings, the Secret Service is also tracking illicit Bitcoin proceeds on the blockchain, which is the public ledger for all crypto transactions.
The Secret Service is now the primary agency investigating the illicit use of digital assets.
David Smith is Assistant Director of the Office of Investigations.
One of the guiding principles of the blockchain is that it was a public ledger that's shared, and everyone with a little bit of computing power has access to it, to include law enforcement. So the Secret Service isn't doing anything that wasn't the original intent of the blockchain. We're just using the same tracking and tracing mechanisms that were intended.
So would you say that crypto is actually more traceable than good old-fashioned cash for a criminal?
In many ways, it is.
So far, the numbers are staggering. The agency has seized more than $102 million worth of crypto in 254 cases. Here, we see analysts and special agents examining Bitcoin wallet addresses.
So they're just making correlations and seeing where the hot spots are, or like a heat map, if you will, to see where the illicit activity is occurring and then focusing on those areas. Because one of the things that is in the benefit of the bad guys is the volume of activity that's occurring out there.
Are you using the same kind of software that all the rest of us have access to?
When you follow a digital currency wallet, it's no different than an email address that has some correlating identifiers. And once a person and another person make a transaction and that gets into the blockchain, we have the ability to follow that email address or wallet address, if you will, and trace it through the blockchain.
Criminals frequently use techniques to obscure the digital money, something Smith compares to a house of mirrors.
All of them exist exactly to keep law enforcement off of the bad guys' trail. They want to go into the blockchain and make as many transfers as possible so they can lose us like an old-fashioned surveillance.
Recent high-profile crypto cases cracked by the Secret Service include an international laundering operation based in Romania that targeted 900 victims across the United States, and a ring of Russian-speaking cyber criminals who threatened U.S. companies with ransomware attacks. One trend seen in cases like this is the use of money mules who may unwittingly be recruited by a fraudster. So these people are just duped into moving the money. They think they're doing one thing, but they're actually doing another.
Correct. And sometimes it's just a matter of trying to make a quick buck. They don't have any criminal intent.
And to protect their investments, crypto criminals regularly watch the market, and they convert Bitcoin into stable coins, which is pegged to an asset like a national currency.
Because, you know, the criminals, hey, they're humans too. They want to avoid some of that market volatility associated with some of the major coins.
Interesting that they're going after stable coins because they hate that volatility. I mean, it is like a roller coaster ride every day watching these prices fluctuate, and the criminals hate that too.
The criminals hate that too because, keep in mind, they're dealing with other criminals, and some of these criminals may apply some consequences they don't want to deal with as well.
Yeah, so if your Bitcoin crashes, you have a problem if you're a crook.
You may have a problem based on who you just transacted with.
All right, Eamon joins us now here on Top Story. Eamon, you used the term stable coin there in your story. For some of us who may not be sort of up to date on everything crypto, what exactly does that phrase mean?
Sure, Tom, a stablecoin is a coin that's deliberately linked to a fiat currency, good old-fashioned currency issued by a government. A lot of them are linked to the U.S. dollar, and they do that through a variety of technical means. The idea is that the price won't swing as widely as Bitcoin swings. It'll be fixed to the dollar price. So it'll go up and down a little bit, especially with this inflation we're seeing right now, but it won't be as crazy as some of the crypto coins are.
You know, you also mentioned these money mules, people who are unwittingly caught up in these schemes. You've reported on this before for us on this show. How exactly do those scams play out, and what should people be on the lookout for?
Well, there's a whole variety of ways that scammers take advantage of people. One big one is romance scams, right? So if you're dating somebody online, and particularly if you've never met that person in person, if you are asked to move money or to deposit any money any place, think hard about that and whether that's a good idea, because that's one of the ways that scammers take advantage of people. Sometimes you get money mules who are in on the scam. They know that they're doing something illegal or at least shady, and they're willing participants in it because they're getting a cut of the money. Other times you've got people out there who are just looking for work and they're picking up odd jobs and they think they're doing a legitimate piece of business. And then you get this other category of people who are being manipulated emotionally, like those romance scams I talked about.
Thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.